Hey, Michael, XForcePC. Want to talk about keyboards? We're now offering a mechanical keyboard and a gaming-focused mouse as an option on some of our systems. And you may say, well, why doesn't that come standard? Well, it would add over $100 to the price of the system. And these devices aren't necessarily for everyone. So there are two main types of keyboards. There's a membrane keyboard and a mechanical keyboard. Now, let's talk about the membrane keyboard first of all. Unless you have sought out a mechanical keyboard, you've actively gone out and purchased one, then you've been using membrane keyboards for a very long time. These membrane keyboards cost about $10 to $15, something like that. I mean, 20 at the most, but around $10 or $15 is kind of the standard price. So that's what makes these so attractive, is the price, and they work fairly well. Now, a membrane keyboard has just what is sort of in the name. It has a membrane that goes across here, and I'll try to give you a sort of a photograph of what that's like. But there's this, again, membrane underneath here, and as you push a key in, it pushes against that membrane, and then the membrane goes, okay, he pushed in this spot, so that must mean he's pressing the J key, and then it sends a signal to the computer. Now, what that gives you is kind of a mushy feeling, and it's probably what you're used to using. Now, I'll move this over close to my microphone, and you can sort of hear the sound of the typing. And there's not a lot of feel that goes along with it, but again, it's kind of what everyone is accustomed to, so you may not really know what you're missing when it comes to a mechanical keyboard. Now, a mechanical keyboard is made up of individual switches if you get the right kind of mechanical keyboard. Now, there are some mechanical keyboards where some of the keys are mechanical, some are not. This is a fully mechanical keyboard. So each individual button or key is a switch. They're rated for many more, I think 50 million key presses, many more key presses. But of course, if the thing is only $10, who cares if it breaks? The mechanical keyboard also has a really nice feel to it. It has a nicer sound to it. You can probably hear that. I'm going to stop talking for a second. And so it gives you a lot more confidence when you're using it that you've actually pressed the key and completed the key press. There are a bunch of different mechanical key switch types. There's the blues, browns, reds, whites, blacks, clears, and it just each key type that I just rattled off gives you a little bit different feel. This one is sort of in the middle. This is a brown, and so it's not overly loud. There are some switch types. I think my Razer keyboard has green switches. Those are really loud. This is sort of in the middle, so this isn't going to disturb people around you too much, but it is going to give you some nice positive feedback when you're using it. So there are a lot of other things that this keyboard has, so we'll talk about those next. Hey, I just want to show you the software that comes with this keyboard, and let's talk about the lighting. So you might say, well, I don't want any lighting on my keyboard, that's dumb or whatever, but one reason you might want lighting is if you're working in the dark, flying in the dark, playing in the dark, and you try to see your keyboard, it can be quite difficult if you're using a keyboard that's not backlit. And this keyboard, you can adjust the brightness of the backlighting with this slider. And by the way, this software runs down in the system tray right down here. And so if you ever want to find it, that's where you'll find it, is right down here in the system tray. You can also change the color of the lighting. You see we have a solid red color here. If I want to make it blue, I just click on the blue down there and drag across the entire keyboard, and now everything is blue. Now, this has per key backlighting, so you can make every single key a different color. So you might say, well, what would be the reason for that? Well, let's say you want to make your the numeric keypad show up better? Well, you can make that red. I just clicked on the red little box here and then dragged across the numeric keypad. Now in X-Plane there are hotkeys, and other games there are hotkeys. For instance, the throttle off the top of my head I believe is F1 and F2. So let's say I want to highlight those. I'm going to make those yellow. I just click on the yellow box down here and then just drag across F1 and F2, and now F1 and F2 are instantly on my keyboard yellow. And all this happens immediately. There's no time lag or anything like that. Now if you just don't want any lighting at all, you can always check this little box that says disable all lighting, and it'll turn off all the lighting, but that's kind of boring, so don't do that. Try not to do that. Now there are other effects you can do. Now and by the way, you can go through here and you can make, all these keys, whatever color you want to make them. By just going down here and clicking on different colors and, clicking on the key, or you can make groups of keys a particular color and just go through here and go crazy. For me, I tend to like all my keys to be red and just a solid red. And so that's how you change the key colors, and next we'll talk about how you can do even fancier stuff. So there are other things you can do. There are lighting effects. So if you check this little box that says enable lighting effects, you see here what the keyboard is doing, and that's what's actually happening on my keyboard. And this is called the default wave, profile or whatever you want to call it. There's breathing. What does that do? Oh yeah, that just kind of fades in and out, and I believe the colors change every time it fades in and fades out, so it goes like red to green to blue to yellow or whatever. So that's the breathing effect. Then there's sonic, which is kind of interesting. So as I hit a key, I'm going to hit the G key. Sorry if that made a sound, because the G key doesn't actually do anything. It's going to make an error message sound. I'm going to hit the L key, and you see the light sort of emanates from the key you hit and goes out to the side. So sorry if you're hearing a bong sound. I'm hearing it in my headset. I don't even know what changeling is. What is that? Oh, okay. As you hit keys, sorry if you're hearing bonging, they light up, they cycle through the colors, and then they go away. So that's what that is. I'm not going to go through all of them. One that's kind of crazy is rain. And so that probably would induce a seizure in some people. And then you can actually have it go through all the lighting effects if you want, and it'll just, cycle through them. Trying to think, wave is kind of another seizure inducing. Did I show that one already? I can't remember. But anyway, there's a bunch of different lighting effects. Personally, I would probably not do the lighting effects, and I would go with either a solid color or a solid color with some particular keys highlighted. But that sort of shows you some of the lighting effects you can do with your keyboard and kind of make it your own. So there's some other features that come along with this keyboard, and I've got the box up here to sort of remind me of the features, and I'll go through them and tell you whether you should care about them or not. First of all, it's Cherry MX switches, so they're kind of the big name in mechanical switches, so that's always a good thing. They're ergonomic contoured keycaps. I mean, that's pretty obvious what that is, but these keycaps have a nicer feel to them than a lot of the membrane keyboards because they're sort of contoured and on the top rather than being completely flat. It has a gaming mode Windows key lock. So I don't know if you've ever been using X-Plane or playing a game in general and you accidentally hit that Windows key. That Windows key brings up the Windows Start menu, and if you're in the middle of a game and you accidentally hit that, then it can really sort of mess you up. So there's software that comes with this thing that will let you lock out, and I think you can even do it using the function key. if I'm not mistaken. So you can sort of do it on the fly with a function button, and you can lock out the Windows key. So if you're going into a gaming session, you don't have to worry about inadvertently pressing that Windows key. It's got a braided USB cable, which is kind of nice. So it's got this sort of braided fabric to it, and it just gives it sort of a premium feel. You have on-the-fly macro recording. So what macros are is if you don't want to go through a whole sequence of key presses, you can do macros with this keyboard where you just hit one key and then it performs a series of key functions for you without you having to go through and press all the various keys. I've never been a macro person. I prefer to just do it the old-fashioned way. But do know that that is a function of this keyboard. It kind of has the kitchen sink when it comes to features. There's a dedicated volume control, so you can control the volume right here from the keyboard. And there's a mute button as well, which is kind of nice. So if you don't have to reach for your speakers or grab your remote for your TV or monitor or whatever, you've got volume right here on the keyboard. There, as I mentioned earlier, there's per key lighting with customizable lighting effects, and then some kind of odd features that are high-end features but probably wouldn't really come into play too much. But it has something called full in-key rollover. So on a membrane keyboard, the maximum number of keys you can press at the same time and have them be registered is 6. Once you press the 7th key, it doesn't know what to do with it. I think it ignores all the keystrokes, but 6 is the maximum. On this keyboard, you could press every key on the keyboard and they would all get registered. Now, it's a feature, but whether or not you would ever use such a feature, I don't know too many people that press more than 6 keys at the same time. But this keyboard does have the functionality of being able to press every single key on the keyboard and have them all get registered. And you have the ability to disable that feature because some, like if you're going to need to go into the BIOS, sometimes the BIOS doesn't like that feature, and so it can be disabled with a function key. So, you hit function and one of these keys at the top, and you can turn off that. So if you need to go in the BIOS, you can. It's also got something called anti-ghosting, which again is one of those features you probably would never use or would never come into play. But in theory, on a membrane keyboard, if you press 2 keys simultaneously, sometimes, in rare instances, a random 3rd key would actually be the one given to the computer. So let's say I pressed A and S at the same time. I might get an R on a membrane keyboard. It's extremely rare. I think they've pretty much been, that has been engineered out of all those membrane keyboards, but it's technically a feature listed for this keyboard, so I did want to mention it as one of the features. So that pretty much covers it. That's in case you were wondering, I do use a mechanical keyboard. Even if you just have this thing on a single light color and don't use all the RGB lighting, they're wonderful to type on. It's a really great experience. If you're getting one of our high-end systems, I'd highly recommend considering it. Even if you don't get the one from us, shop around, do a little research, and maybe get a Razer or a Cooler Master or whatever. This one happens to be made by G-Skill. But mechanical keyboards are really, really great and great to type on.